Good evening, everyone. Just before I start the meeting, we have had a request from Councillor Jewell for for Councillor Rowland to read out a statement about climate, item 11. As chair, I've said that's fine, but I think forward for all the committees, I think it's only right that such statements can be made with the permission of the relevant chairman, but should be lodged as far as possible with officers a few days beforehand. So that's only fair for other people to be able to see it rather than just absorb it. Right, let's start the meeting. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Woodley Town Council's Strategy and Resources Committee being held on 12th of September 2023. Woodley Town Council meetings are now recorded, with recordings streamed live and stored on the Town Council's YouTube channel. By virtue of attending the meeting, you consent to having your image and audio recorded for this purpose. If you do not wish for your image and audio to be recorded, then please do not stay for the meeting. For those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill tonight, so if you hear the fire alarm, please head to the nearest fire exit and congregate at the fire assembly point by the Edward Centre at the front of Woodford Park. Thank you. So let's getting on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies.
Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Hawkins, and also Councillor Nagros passed a message on to say that unfortunately you've run late.
Okay. Any other apologies? I think that's the only two names. Declarations of interest. Any declaration of interest from members relating to the business of the meeting? Looking around? No. Item 3. Minutes of the meeting held on 13th June 2023 to approve the minutes of the S&R committee held on 13th of June 2023, and that they'll be signed after the meeting by the chairman as a correct record. And I see a show of hands for approval. Councillor Jagger.
I just want one thing at the bottom of page 12, item 15.3. There's a couple of words missing in the sentence to the point where it's a bit difficult to understand it. But it's about the deputy town clerk, then should be something between that and any other parcels.
Yes, it should, I guess, read the deputy town clerk. Was requested to identify it.
Okay.
I'm happy to.
So we'll make that amendment. Any other?
Sorry, Chairman, on page 10, minute number 8, we were hopeful to have a report from the town centre manager on the new CCTV cameras. He was going to bring a report to this meeting. Can we assume that there is still work ongoing and he'll bring it to the next meeting?
Sorry.
No, you don't.
No, I was just going to say in terms of update, yes, I think some things have moved in terms of that and potential funding other things, but yeah, we'll get an update back at least so the members know where they're.
Right. It's on page 7, item 6. We're expecting to see in figures to do with the room hire and catering income, the pre-pandemic figures, or we hoped we'd see them, but I don't think we're seeing them still.
Yeah, okay.
That's it.
Okay. On that last point, we could, as soon as Kevin's got them, circulate around the members, or do you want to wait until the next meeting? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll say Kevin will circulate. Okay. Any others? Otherwise, all those in favour, please show. Unanimous. Meetings of the extraordinary meeting held on 27th of July 2023. Saying approve the minutes of that meeting held on 27th of July on page 20. Can I have your approval to sign them? Yep. All right, all those in favour, please show. Thank you.
I didn't vote because I wasn't there.
Okay, so all those abstaining? Thank you. So it wasn't unanimous, but. Okay, item 5, finance, budgetary control, reports SR 1723 on page 38. Over to you, Cameron.
Thank you. So budgetary control, in the usual way, some things to note under expenditure, so i.e. those that are over the 42%, where month 5 would lead us to. Under central costs, with staff, software licenses and the VAT partial exemption slightly over 42%, so this is that figure slightly over. Under corporate management, we have insurance, memberships and the HR and health and safety package, which is paid out at the start of the year, which takes that over in terms of where we are at month 5. Likewise, capital programme showing 100%, that's the 45,000 that's allocated in the budget at the start of the year. So overall, that gives us shy of 39%, which is on the right side. Income-wise, ones that are over there, deposit account interest, so that top line, which is central costs, is interest on the deposit account. Room hire at the Oakwood Centre, which is over 42%, and also interest on CCLA invested funds, which is running at 77% at the moment, which is great. So again, it's on the right side of the 42.
Any questions for Kevin on any of that? Mike?
Chairman, apologies for not giving advance notice of this question to the Deputy Town Clerk. It just strikes me, democratic costs over 100,000 in the budget. The hire of this room for this meeting and all our council meetings and committee meetings is a democratic cost. And to reflect that in our budget, I think we should charge the democratic cost of holding this meeting and other council meetings to that budget, and with a contra income item on the Oakwood Centre.
That does happen.
It does happen.
But it's not highlighted in there, but that's a good point.
Oh,
We do charge for the hire of the halls.
right.
Yeah.
And it's put into the
So within the democratic costs cost centre, under the separate cost codes, there is one for that.
Excellent.
Any other questions, comments?
Can I just ask a quick question about the Oakwood Centre figure? So there seems to be an increase of about 5,000 to 6,000 from 22 to 23. Could you say what is that inflation or is it?
No, we've had more social bookings in. We've had quite a run on them recently, which is really good. That seems to be continuing.
Any other questions? I just want to make one comment. You might look at the expenses on page 38 and you look at what it was this time last year compared to this time this year, and it's just around about 100,000. The bulk of that is that we reinstated the capital program or couple of projects budget of 45,000. So that's why that's gone up quite significantly. It's down to that. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we stopped it because of the pandemic and things like that.
Yeah.
But we did want to restart it. We've done it. And on that note, if there's no more questions. All those in favour, please show. All those against?
Because I was not here, so
Okay.
I don't
That's
know.
right. Abstain.
We only need to know the budget control figures.
Right. Next. 5B payments, appendix 5B, page 40. Again, any questions on a lot of data there?
Thanks. On page 40, the ecotricity bills, for gas supply, there seem to be two sort of abnormally large bills for £5,000. I admittedly they're there for 2 months, but Which properties are they for?
That'll be for here and Woodford Park Leisure Centre.
Oh, right, so both together sort of thing.
One of those will be one and one will be the other. So there's two there.
Oh,
Two separate.
Yeah.
right,
Two separate.
I see what you mean. Yeah, because they're the same period, aren't they? Yes, so it's one for each building. So I haven't finished.
Right. Just before you find the next one, can I suggest you've already, a couple of lines above that, you've actually identified.
I know, I have started doing that again,
So can you do
Yes.
that for?
no problem.
the others?
And list the location. I will.
Continue.
On page 40, if I can go on to page 42, that is. I'm just wondering with the gas supplies, this costs, say that's electricity again. Do you sort of pay the amount owed per month according to the meter, or I mean, like at home, you pay a certain amount per direct, by direct debit, it's the same amount each month, but these seem to be very variable. So is it the actual amount of gas or whatever?
It is, yeah. So it also will hit this in a very seasonal way in terms of the budgetary control. We'll see obviously a lot more expenditure in the winter.
Right, yes, okay, thank you. On page 44, BCK Accounting Solutions Limited is a VAT partial exemption charge. Is that to do with the town centre?
Partly.
No, that's mainly due to partial exemption calculation that is done for the previous year. That's the cost of working it out.
Yeah. But part of that work does include the VAT implications of the town centre change in taking that in-house, so to speak.
Oh, right, okay, so that's the effort sort of thing. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, because it's got a lot about heating systems in the agenda pack altogether. So at the top of page 44, you replace a heat exchanger boiler. Where is that?
That was the flat above the leisure centre,
Oh.
the boiler in the rented flat.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, well, thanks very much. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so we need to vote to approve those. All those in favour, please show. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Item C, the PSEF funds, page 46. Again.
Yep. As you can see, the figures show what is coming into the accounts. The main account, which will pay the 2 million, at the moment, as you can see, it's got 79,000 added to it, which is very good. And also the likelihood by the year end, I would say it should be about 95 for this current year. So which is very good. And then on the investment side, as you can see again, we've had 21,000 come in, but I would like to recommend or would propose, with the approval from the councillors, is to add another 150,000 from our deposit account, which currently has about 235,000, and we should be getting a precept income this month, hopefully next week, of 597. So that would increase and possible an extra income of interest, about 4,000 on top of what we have at the moment. So I think the investments are doing very well.
Mike?
I mean, I think, Chairman, day-to-day housekeeping and moving money around between accounts, we should leave that to the officers, because they are in a best position to get best value and the maximum amount of income generation. And certainly the precept, which we receive in 2 half-yearly instalments, is due on the 1st of October.
Yes.
It should be. And it's a big chunk of money coming in. I mean, it's right that that is put to good use through our investments.
I
And the
think
officers should be able to do that.
from my perspective as chair, I think generally that's a good approach. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's something in the financial regulations that puts an upper limit on that discretion. And I think it would be wise to keep that upper limit. If movement needs to be done relatively quickly, we do have the urgency committee that can approve it. We potentially could do emails to this group, being the sort of the money committee. So there are avenues to do that. Does that?
Yeah, I'm answered, yeah.
That's fine. Any other questions? So basically, the table on the left is the investment for paying off the debt for nothing more.
Nothing more.
Table on the right
It's just
is
our-
all the relevant money, like general reserves, earmark reserves, that are sort of slushing around,
Yes,
being put to work.
to work, I suppose, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to know, right, on that basis, that's just a note, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
So anything with the suggestion of the money.
I think if members were minded to approve that at this meeting, they could do that, or it can come to the next one next time. No urgency to it, particularly.
No urgency. I think the fact that it wasn't captured,
No,
Yeah, we can do that for next.
whilst I'm sure every one of us is going to agree to it, but the process really should be, it's a recommendation in here.
Okay.
That
We can do
people
that.
then have the opportunity to ask questions. Okay. Yeah, everybody okay on that? Okay. Item 6, the VAT charges, SR 1823, page 47.
Okay, thank you. As previously reported to this committee and to Leisure Services, and following a court ruling back in January, HMRC conceded that charges for local authority sports facilities should fall outside the scope of VAT, which has not been the case historically. That means councils across the country are that have charged VAT on sports provision are able to claim that money back, going back over a period of 4 years. The Town Council submitted an initial claim for the period January to March 2019, and we're working through that with HMRC at the moment. They have come back to us and asked for some clarifications on some things, so we're working through that. For context, there does remain some lack of clarity in relation to how some bookings and hires are treated. We do have a system in place to provide consistency and make sure we've got a rationale for how we're doing that going forwards. In the absence of any specific guidance, again, for information, HMRC are in ongoing talks with CIPFA, the Chartered Institute for Public Finance and Accountancy, in that regard, and we're expecting some clearer guidance to be published over time, but we do have that mechanism in place. We're confident in how we're doing. There is some mixed advice in the sector about the amounts that councils should claim in relation to what they do with it ultimately in terms of reimbursing customers. There is a requirement that claims don't constitute unjust enrichment to the council, i.e. the council seem to be cashing in on the situation. The advice from NALC through the Parkinson Partnership, who advised NALC on that, is that that wouldn't be the case, particularly in the situation where service is subsidised, as ours is in leisure. That would never constitute unjust enrichment because we're not making out of it. The proposal in the report is that the council continues to claim all incorrectly charged VAT, and over that 4-year period, on the basis of reimbursing customers who were incorrectly charged the VAT on invoice bookings, because they're straightforward ones to do, they're cost effective to do. We know what those customers are, and we can do that. Claimed funds that cannot be directly reimbursed to individuals, because it's quite difficult, not cost effective in the time taken to try and actually do that. The proposal is that those funds will be placed in an earmarked reserve specifically for use with the Park Leisure Centre for sports provision. That principle being that money shouldn't remain with HMRC, who collected it incorrectly. And actually, that is a mechanism that even if we're not reimbursing the individual, that money comes back to the council, goes back to the service from which it was gained as revenue in the first place, and ultimately benefits residents as well who support the services we provide. So that's the principle that we are working to, and that's the proposal. Different councils are doing it in different ways, and we've spoken with our advisors. We've spoken and met with Steve Parkinson, who advises now, and also with DCK Beavers about that, and again, kind of try to explore what those differences are. We think that's the way forward, and that it's fair, we can justify it, we can document it very clearly, and going forwards, even if there was if things changed further down the road, we'd have a very clearly documented rationale for what we've done, how we've done it, and if it needs adjusting further down the road, we'd be able to do that. Members are asked to consider that approach. We continue and make those claims in that way.
So can I just be absolutely clear? What the proposal is we claim the money back. Anyone that is clearly identifiable, we offer the money back. You might want to consider other things like credit notes or whatever, but basically that transaction will be offered. And where we can't identify, that money then goes into an earmark reserve dedicated to reinvestment into the Hertfordshire Centre. Is that?
Can I just make one clarification there? What we were talking about in terms of being able to identify people, talking about invoiced bookings,
Yes,
as opposed to individual bookings.
No, I'm sorry, I meant to say.
No, that's all
Clearly
right.
identified because it's an invoice.
There is an important factor in there, which is also to do with gym membership, which is a grey area. What we're proposing there is that isn't reimbursed directly to gym members going back to day dot because of the work involved in the fluctuations in gym memberships and what that actually might do to the gym charges, which are set at a very good level and had some introductory levels as well. So what we were talking about is invoice bookings that would receive that, and then any surplus going into the earmark.
So I have Anne, followed by Juliet, followed by Beth, followed by Imagine. Anne?
So one thing is, does that mean an invoice sounds like something that there's an individual resident might not have?
Yeah.
So it's not individual residents?
No, they're considered that in the legal terms from HMRC, but yes, those that are invoiced would be our group bookings and organisations that.
Right. Right. So that affects my second question, which was going to be, is it going to be rather a lot of work? But I can see that as it's invoice bookings, it makes a lot of.
It's much simpler, yeah.
Yes.
We can track that from our account system relatively easily. There's still there's a lot of it.
Yes.
As we found, but it's doable.
But it's possible to reimburse people that have been invoiced.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So that was my question. How long do you think this is going to take you to do? This feels like a considerable amount.
It is.
It will be.
Ed said, give me a week of doing nothing else, and I'll hammer it all out and do it, which sounds about right. That is a lot of time. That said, the urgency, there's not as much urgency in doing that piece of work. We need to get the claims in by a certain deadline.
Yes. Before inform HMRC.
It goes out. But actually, we can do that bit of work in our own time, essentially. It's also dependent on what we actually get back through the claims anyway. We don't know yet till we've made them and we get some feedback from HMRC.
That was my cost. Can we do it within the current establishment, or do we need additional help? Yeah.
And we claim the cost back.
So you're happy with Kevin's answer, Beth?
Yes, because we can only go so far because we don't actually have all the figures and the details yet. So
Yeah.
we think we can handle it within the.
Yes, particularly given that we can do it in our own time.
Yeah.
I've worked out all the invoices. I've got a spreadsheet that has got everybody that. The only thing we need to work out is who were vatable and not vatable. And they are the ones that we would reimburse in claim.
The spreadsheet could tell you that, couldn't it?
Nobody's working out which is what Ed would be able to do by looking at the company's name and the invoice and the data and say whether it was outside the scope or not.
Yeah, because some still are, some might be a room hire as opposed to a sports. Yeah.
Imagine?
I have three questions. First one is you have just mentioned 4 years and it's written here twice somewhere. Is it in court decision, the duration of last 4 years, or it can be 5 years? Or
No,
No,
it's by HMRC, where you can only claim back 4 years and nothing more.
Okay. And second one, although you have already explained, like you are going to return this money only to those who paid by card or even cash, and do we have record of like 4 years old record? I know you have explained it.
Yeah, so it would be invoice booking, so people who were actually issued with a VAT invoice for those
That's
bookings.
how they paid it.
Yeah, so-
Money is.
Yeah, and we would contact each and every one of those and explain the situation and record it first.
So the person who came in off the street
Yeah.
and booked a Badminton court, we wouldn't have that draft.
No, we wouldn't be able to identify individual people coming off the street or one-off booking.
Okay, and last one, like what impression I'm getting here that VAT was not legal or it was not allowed. So what will happen in future? In future, prices, will VAT be excluded? And if excluded, prices will come down?
Possibly, and that will be something for council to consider when looking at the prices going into next year. We're not quite sure yet what the impact of this year will be on that in the outturn for Woodford Park Leisure Centre. So in the context of that, absolutely, members will be able to make some decisions about what to do with deposit. Yeah.
Because if VAT is included in future, HMRC is not going to return money every time.
So it won't be charged as the law states now. It won't be charged on those facilities, albeit there's still some vagaries which activities that applies to.
And that will be down to the Leisure Services Committee to make those recommendations. Okay, is there any other questions on this? So on page 48, we've got the recommendations. With the committee's approval, I want to take them both together. So I think we all now understand the point 2 or the second bullet. All those in favour, please show. Unanimous. Thank you very much. So item 7, Open Centre income update, bookings and room hire. These are both for noting, page 49. Want to make any comments?
Yeah, just to note, obviously I've taken on board that missing comparison to pre-COVID, and we'll get that out as soon as possible. So the room hire in month 5 is at 39,263 against a budget of 27,083 on that chart on page 49. So that's looking good. Catering income is much nearer the sort of expected budget line at 5,098. As we mentioned earlier, what we're seeing impacting on that is more social bookings, but a lot of them have been arranging their own catering. We've had a lot of Asian gatherings who bring their own sort of specialist caterer for doing that as opposed to using in-house one. We've had quite a few of those this year.
Any questions for Kevin at all? No? Okay, that is just to note. We're on the way to recovery. So item 8, page 51, Woodland Centre Partnership. 1. Kay was there and so was I. You weren't there, were you, Beth? So if there's any questions, we might be able to field them. So otherwise, this is for just to receive it.
Just a quick question on page 52, but
Yeah.
the police report, item 7.
Yep.
It's just a comment that I noted. It says it showed a relatively low number of shoplifting and ASB has been reported in this time. It kind of felt contrary to the understanding we well, I certainly took from the meeting where we talked about CCTV, because I think the town centre manager made reference to a big increase in shoplifting. So I kind of thought, oh, that, I'm not sure that's quite right, but obviously that's a police report. But I don't know if there's any way we can feed back.
Well, we could to Brian. I totally agree with you. But I think, I would expect TVP will turn around and say, these are reported incidents. If you go and talk to, for instance, the manager of Waitrose and some of the other big shops, they say now, don't bother, because
Okay.
the police aren't going to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, which is unfortunate.
Mm.
We can answer that question. though.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Great.
Chairman, can I just ask, the absence of retailers in this partnership is worrying, is it not? Should we not have representatives from Boots, Waitrose and?
They are invited. And unfortunately, Beth's been on longer than I have.
Yeah, Waitrose are quite often there.
Yeah, they've been for a long time.
Boots haven't been there for a long time. The smaller ones, don't want to pay anything into it and don't have the time to come.
They usually are too, from the pet shop and from the funds.
Independent.
Both of them were actually on holiday, I think, at that particular time, so they couldn't make it. But they look like boots and that.
But that may well change if the bid proposal that Brian's working on
Yeah.
or actually goes through, because all the retail units and almost certainly all the industrial units as well will have to pay a surcharge based on their rateable value. So I'm sure if they're paying money, they'll want to see how it's managed. But it will be, if it's successful, the town centre management partnership, as we know it today, will disappear. It'll be much more of a commercial operation, which Brian, I must admit, I agree is what it means. That's the next step.
I ask, there's a reference to apologies from Sophia Francisci, unable to attend today and future meetings due to health. Is she a retailer?
No, she's a resident.
Oh, right, okay. So is a new deputy chair being appointed?
No, I think she was the one that was elected last time around.
Yes, that's right. We've not replaced it yet.
No.
Yes, and then she's improving, so she might
be there.
Yes.
She's a stalwart.
Yeah.
And she's a resident, not a politician
No.
or a retailer.
Are residents appointed to it?
When they're voted on by the committee.
Yeah, at the AGM, right, at the AGM, anyone can put their name forward. In the Constitution, it defines that from memory, I can't, it's something like 4 residents, 2 retailers, 2 councillors or something.
Where's it advertised then?
I assumed it would be a majority of retailers on it.
Never has
There
been.
wouldn't be a committee, would there?
So can I say something? So sorry.
That's all right.
So I think it speaks volumes that people don't go to this. I don't think it's just about money. I think it's about usefulness. If people find something useful, they will attend. And I'm really pleased to hear that maybe this will be shaken up and changed, because it feels and it looks a bit old-fashioned, if I'm honest. And it feels like people don't actually submit anything. It feels like a lot of verbal reports, which again worries me. So I think I would welcome a shift with this, and I would welcome a bit more transparency around how people get on it. You know, what are the residents doing there? What's their remit? What's the tours? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of the people that are in the industries in our precinct being there? You know, what is it? What is everybody's roles on this committee, and what are the objectives? So I welcome whatever Brian's doing when we get to a different place. But could we ask him to bring the terms of reference?
Well, there is
here.
there's a constitution.
Yeah, I've read
Well,
it. It's not.
I thought it was
Modern.
but
Well, it doesn't really do what we need it to do, does it? Because no, that's not right. It doesn't do what these people need it to do, otherwise they'd be banging down the door and they're not. So I think it needs looking at. Whether the constitution needs looking at, I'm not sure it does. I think it's the terms of reference for meetings.
Well, there is, as I said, the bid movement.
See, I'm not sure. I think that's a stick rather than a carrot.
It's really a very good, it's going on, it's been
Essential.
led
So-
by the, no, not the shop owners, it's being led by, you know people, isn't it?
Trademark,
Yes, trademark.
Mark Ashall.
It's really good, it's going to be really a very good thing.
So he and Brian have been working on the process for that,
What are they doing?
the bid process. It's a, yes,
Oh, okay, fine.
and it's a government
Right, fine.
process.
Yeah.
And there hasn't gone through town centre partnership yet,
Okay.
but there is an external consultant who specialises in actually putting it together.
Is it on the back of it also? On the back of the local skills improvement plan? What's it on the back of? Is it just a standalone?
It's a, yeah.
box?
What it fundamentally,
Yes.
So all the bid does is ties in the retailers and it can also be the industrial or ratepayers really, not councillors, not residents, ties in those organisations into contributing every year surcharge on their rates.
Okay.
So at the moment, for argument's sake, the budget there is 60 or 70,000 a year.
And they see benefit from that additional cost?
Yes,
to
because
those-
they, not every single one of them, but there will be a board of directors effectively who will manage it just like a company as well. So it will take it from old fashioned, everybody's, trying to do the right thing into a well organised. But it's got to be,
So are we likely to get approval?
well, the first step of the meeting, and anybody can go to the PCNP meetings, by the way, it's open. The first step is to get the authority of the executive of the TCNP to commit to spending money, and it's not a small amount, to engage this consultant who just specialises in bid and getting them engaged, and they will effectively write it for us. Because to be fair, you don't want, you don't want me, Beth or whatever, writing this, because that would probably guarantee failure.
It's a proper job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for them. That's the next step.
Uh-huh.
And then the ultimate end of the process is it's something like 70% or 75% of ratepayers within the bid area have to agree it. Then it goes forward.
yeah, so the area is defined and everyone within it votes, subject to that vote going through, which then automatically comes into being. And
It's
there's
approved then, is it?
that levy is then collected by
Timeline?
Woking Borough Council. Good question, I'm not sure.
It's not
how
going to
long.
be short.
Well,
If we're going to do a good job.
Yeah, so there's going to be, yeah, and there's going to be quite a bit of consultation to do because you don't want to do it if it's going to fail.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
But Mark Ashwell with trademark. They're in that estate. And so he's got all the contacts in the estate. Brian's got contacts here in retail. So in principle, we've got both of the major areas covered. And maybe what we should do is get Brian here, or even that consultant, engaging, to give a presentation to full council
Yeah,
of, because it's important for all councils, not just.
because you're going to hire somebody to do that, but I think we probably need to put somebody onto a bit of a common strategy. Because that's really important if you're going to do this, and you can't rely on two blokes engaging everybody. You need a proper common strategy with some timelines and milestones.
Yeah, and you're right, because council will need to make a decision because it would ultimately stop the town centre partnership, which is something we councils had in one form or another for a very long time. So that is a fundamental shift which the council would have to decide.
It's growing, it's called growing up, I think. Right, if there's no other questions, comments. Now over to the big one, capital programme, page 53 and enclosure. Over to you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. A little bit of background and I'll move on to what I'm asking you for. £45,000 was allocated in the budget into the capital programme fund, which is essentially an earmarked reserve that the council has had for a long time to fund capital projects it wants to do in the year. As Keith mentioned earlier, we didn't do it during the pandemic period because it wasn't appropriate, and we restarted that in last year and have achieved all the projects that were set out in last year, with the exception of one, which was for commemorative seating, which is a project that will roll forwards. The current balance in the capital programme, including the 45,000 that was allocated in this year, is just over 56,000. We have a number of projects for consideration, which requiring investment, which can't be met from that balance. Some of those projects can be funded from available SIL money, community infrastructure levy money, some from existing earmarked reserves, and others would require funding from the capital programme via an additional allocation from the general reserve. I hope that makes sense. All are considered essential investment really in the council's income generating and high profile facilities. If I can just set out the proposal and then look at the individual projects, if that's okay. The projects to be considered for funding from the capital programme, which would require a transfer from the general reserve, are shown in Appendix A, and then there's an assessment of each project in the separate enclosure, the larger document in Appendix B. In summary, the proposal here is to allocate £140,000 from the general reserve to the capital programme to fund those projects. Table in Appendix A shows the allocation, the individual project budgets, and the capital programme balance. It also shows the balances of the buildings and facilities earmarked reserve and the play area earmarked reserve at the bottom of that page. So it does get a bit complicated because there's kind of funds within funds, but I'll try and explain why that is. The impact on the general reserve can be mitigated through the release of some unused earmarked reserves, which we've currently got, which were set up to deliver capital projects outside of the capital programme in previous years. Those projects are now complete. Those are shown in the table at the top of page 54. So there's 4 earmarked reserves there, which would enable just over 38,000 to be released back into the general reserve, which would essentially offset the impact of that in this year to just over 100,000 allocation from the general reserve. Also on page 54, under community infrastructure levy, there's currently £30,909 of available SIL funding, which the council has. SIL funding is for capital projects and also time limited, so there's some urgency to get in shot of that in the nicest possible way in spending that money on capital projects. And it's proposed there that the project to replace the boilers in the Oakwood Centre would be met from that money. Also on page 54, under the play area earmarked reserve, the council currently has just shy of £23,000 in that earmarked reserve, which is specifically for investment in the playground. It's proposed that project to replace the safety surfacing at Malone Park, which has been flagged up in the last ROSPA inspection. It's looking pretty tired and been there a long time. That needs doing, and that could be met from that money. For some additional context, and just going back to the 2 funds I mentioned, which are at the bottom of that Appendix A, which is the Buildings and Facilities Fund and the Play Area earmarked reserve. The internal audit report did make reference to the fact that those earmarked reserves seem to be low, and we've kept them low and running rather low in comparison to the assets that we've got, and that was not what we really wanted to see. albeit in the context of us having a large general reserve. So we, it's not that we haven't got money to deal with it, but it indicates that we're not planning far enough ahead, which is fair comment. One of the recommendations in there was to reassess that going forwards, and what we will be looking to do through the budget setting in this year is to have a longer term plan for that and change how and probably how much we allocate to the capital programmes to those funds going forwards, because we know that our buildings are getting older. We know that we need some money being put aside for those things, and that's a better way to do it rather than doing it all in one hit, kind of at the last minute, so to speak. In summary, I realise there'll be questions about the individual projects, but in summary, what I'm asking the committee to consider is the allocation of capital programme. The allocation of funds to the capital programme from the general reserve to fund the project set out in Appendix A. The release of the unspent earmarked reserves identified in the table there to the general reserve. The funding of the Open Centre boiler project from available seal money. The funding of the play area surfacing from the play area earmarked reserve.
And just before I throw it open, on bottom of page 54, you'll see the resource impacts. General reserve is now 858,000, which is very healthy. That increase, was it 184 from 184,000?
Not from the previous year,
Yeah.
124.
124, 124,000. So requesting 140, it almost is quid pro quo. So I'll throw it open to any questions on any of this, please.
I should have gone for 212.
And of course, the play area thing will come back in the future. So all those, the recommendations on page 55, I want to take them on block unless committee.
Can I just make a comment, Jim? I think the officer's done a brilliant job in putting this report together. And can I just ask that the aspiration is for all of these projects to be completed in the current financial year?
Yes. Yeah.
That's fine. There are other projects, and I'm sure members have got their own pet projects, but I know Weeble Drive play area has been talked about, and there is a piece of amenity space with some play equipment in at Drovers Way. I don't know whether we own that, but that looks a bit tight as I drove past it the other day.
We don't, but
we don't.
I think that the point you're probably getting at is there will be other projects,
There will be projects, yeah.
and some of those will be linked to other things like the development of Woodford Park Leisure Centre,
Yes.
which we're going to need to start looking at in this
Yes.
year, and how best to invest in the future of the centre. This doesn't stop any other projects coming online at any point, because council can consider and do what it needs to do. Some of these are more urgent ones in terms of protecting our income generating things. So here and the leisure centre.
And just to add a point to what we're talking about, Weeble Drive and Drovers Way are Woking Borough Council play areas. And my own personal view is it's their areas, they should be maintaining it. But we might at a future meeting discuss a principle. Should we have a principle that says it's got to be if it's WBC, they've got to look after it, and it's only exceptional circumstances or whatever, but that will be for the future. All right.
Are you sure Weeble Drive's?
It's Reading. It's
I'm sorry, Reggie, yes. What I mean is it's not Woodley Town.
No, yeah.
The residents not.
Residents don't care, yeah.
Can I just ask a question about the reserve? Bit high, we clearly want it a bit lower than that. So to that end, are we going to, have we got a ballpark that we think we might put into capital projects? Because it clearly needs to increase from that.
Not at the moment,
Will you
but
bring that back?
yeah, definitely. That will come through and be part of the budget anyway, but that needs a sit down and a good rethink, because those earmarks are big.
I think the rule of thumb, I might have to double cross check this, is that your general reserves should cover, I think it's 3 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Expenditure. It is 3 months, yeah. And we are way over that.
So just, just look.
Yeah, and we have got some projects and some, Woodford Park's going to need some proper investment.
And we're not talking about 10,000, we're talking about a lot of money.
Sorry, could I ask? Slightly but could we consider asking Reading Borough Council about Woodley Town Council taking over Weevil Park? For example, we know Solihull Park belongs to Reading Borough Council, but Early Town Council have got very, very long lease on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because Reading Borough Council don't seem to really care about that park. They don't have that many of their tenants in the area anymore. The area's changed, but we want our local children in that area to have a great play area. I think it's something we can investigate.
Yes, nothing's off the table. If we want to do that, then there will be cost implications, which we need, any decision like that needs to balance that up.
But I would be completely supportive of that in terms of health inequalities. That's just the place we want our kids getting out and playing.
It's a very safe player, isn't it? It's away from the road.
But our experience of taking over, we're working in Borough,
I know that.
Was it Malone Park?
Malone, we did eventually.
About 3 years, 4 years it took.
Morrison Close we tried as well.
But as a principle, yes, that ought to be.
I mean, we were taking over. And it was in their borough. This isn't even in Reading, so.
Don't just say, I have a lot of money, don't I?
Well,
But it's relevant.
councillors and officers in Reading are never going to be prioritising a play area in Woodley.
They might have to get rid of it.
Yeah. No,
Like the allotments, what belongs to Reading Borough Council.
Yes.
And I personally, that's one I would personally like to have under ownership of the town council. But these are things that for a future meeting.
We pay for Reading a lot.
I know. And sorry,
Yeah, I'm just thinking, can you really get all of these projects done by the end of next March, including sort of changing the heating systems and things?
Yes, most of those, particularly the heating systems, are actually quite urgent and we're ready to go and do it.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
In anticipation of
the check already written out, just as a signature. Right, if there's no more questions, I'm going to go to the vote for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 recommendations on page 55. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. And on behalf of the residents and all councillors, can we say such a really big thank you for officers. You manage the finances brilliantly, and it's only through that good management we can do these sorts of things. Thank you.
It's made ash white.
Yes.
You should see his bottom drawer.
Thank you. My secret sound.
We now have the new finance employee that we announced at the extraordinary meeting.
I'll be out.
Yeah, that's
Ash
that.
is the.
I thought we were creating another place to support him.
No,
No.
just me.
Oh, well. You are ingenious.
We thought he had some spare capacity.
Although we do have a plan to support Ash more going forwards.
Yes.
Item 10, page 57, the free hire of council venues. Over to you again, Tim.
Matt,
Also, I've done the work on
That's
this.
good.
So just to give you a background, the reason this is coming to this meeting particularly is we've had requests over the years for free use of council venues, generally exceptional requests from people who are not-for-profit organisations or charities wanting to use our venues for something special or a fundraising activity. I went back as far as 2015 to look back and see the records and history of that. I believe it goes back slightly before that, but I can't find any further details, so I can't find the original decision. But since then, at least, every decision has come to this committee for consideration. We had a request that came through last year that missed a meeting of Strategy and Resources, but due to the need to book a venue, had to come to full council. That was agreed, and full council asked this committee to reconsider how those requests were handled last year. That happened in November 2022, and this committee at the time determined again to just continue with any of those exceptional requests coming here. We received a further request in April 2023 for free use. A different decision was made that time by this committee, not to give free use, but instead to give an award of £250 to the organisation to put towards the cost of hiring this centre. And at the same time, the committee again resolved to return it to this committee for the new committee to reconsider it. Didn't happen at the last meeting and was deferred here. So that's why it's come here. So really in the context, as you can see, there aren't a huge number of requests we get. It's not something we advertise to do, and they do tend to come through on an ad hoc basis when people are trying their luck and asking us. Those are then brought to this committee and made a decision. In terms of the venue hire costs, obviously, it obviously impacts on any income generating that we might do by hiring a room, but the requests are very minimal, so don't impact a huge amount. And generally, we will resource that with staff within our weekly resourcing anyway, so we're not paying additional overtime fees for people to staff those events. So it doesn't tend to cost us really anything other than the potential income. We've also, for example, with the request from Woodley Volunteers for a Community, we worked on the basis of trying to find a date where we weren't booked in the near future, and we're unlikely to receive a booking to kind of make it beneficial for us. So as I say, the committee have asked a couple of times for it to be reviewed by this committee. It was decided last November that they would continue to come here. So this committee are asked this time under recommendations to consider the process again. And we are, as officers, recommending that they are continue to be presented to this committee on an ad hoc basis so that you have the ability to consider them. But the committee are also asked to consider whether they wish to potentially set up a task and finish work group to considering this has been challenged a couple of times, whether some more formal arrangement needs to be around those decisions so that you have some guidelines to work towards.
Right, just before I throw it open, my first question really for all of you is, are you happy with the way it's working ad hoc now? And you don't want to change. If that's the case, then we can move on to the next agenda item. So, or is there a significant number that say you've got to do something different? I'm looking around, I can't see. You happy with what it is now?
Yeah.
What about the question of the criteria there? On page 58, the bullets. Should we have a more formal set of criteria that potentially officers can use as a filter before it comes here?
And the main reason I think I've suggested that as an option is because the last two occasions, committee members have challenged that agreement of a free use and have suggested it isn't unfair and it may set a precedent. Not the entire committee, the decision has been separately, and as I say, the last decision actually decided not to give free use and to give quite a large amount of money to the organisation to cover the costs. So it's really because of that challenge that has come previously that suggestion is there.
I'll throw it open for any questions, comments. Otherwise, I think it's just continuing as is.
I mean, I think a filter is always useful, and I think if you apply the things that you've written down here, that will, what you get hundreds, but it will filter out some that are inappropriate, and then the odd one. I mean, yeah, why not bring it? So if we can just make a decision. This feels like we've been kicking this into the long grass for a while. I think if that's the decision that we're happy with a bit of a filter, that's how it is with a bit of a filter.
Beth?
The only one I don't like on here is to set a limit to the number of requests. And if it's for somebody, for instance, like ARC or some community youth partnership, I wouldn't want to turn them away because they're doing things for our young people and our families.
So maybe just take out the last bit and look at the limiting request, because if it's like 10 a year, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
We have, because we know what wonderful community we have in Woodley, we have a lot of charities, community groups, youth organisations. And if they all applied for one free use,
We wouldn't have any.
which they can, we welcome applications.
Remember,
I think it has to be very much an individual decisions, and these are the questions we would look at when we're here. But Matthew needs something when people ring up and say, "Do you think we could get free hire?" Just to be able to know whether to bring it
Yeah.
To the committee.
It's the test, isn't it? If the officers go through this list and then they bring it, then we are assured that they've been through this list, and that's our test.
I'd just like to take that one out, about 5-10
I
years.
think that's technology request 5-10 year bit out.
Yeah,
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the only other point to make on that is just the point 4 says set to maximum part-time or space allocation. That's vague in terms of, it was for you guys to consider what that might be. So I don't know whether you want to consider that very briefly.
Well, is it one day? I mean, you know, what it isn't, it's a whole weekend for the entire Oakwood Centre.
yeah, and within normal working hours.
I can take it out if you think that, again, you want that freedom. These were there for something you might want to discuss.
Yeah.
That's if you want the option of.
I think you could take it out because I think that's something that we could discuss as a one-off bit. If they pass everything else and it is something unique, like a.
I think likewise, where it says free hire is only venue and doesn't include using the projector or something, because if they're things that usually we charge to borrow, which is fine, but if it's something that isn't actually an extra cost and it would make a big difference to one of our local organisations, then that's something we could decide on an individual basis rather than blanket saying, no, it's only.
I would say on that front, then it would be helpful from an officer's perspective if we kept chair covers and tablecloths, because they are quite costly.
Yeah.
They're more
They're
costly.
yeah.
Projectors, PA system we have in house, so they're not a problem. So, okay.
Okay.
So the proposal, sorry, Anne.
Yeah, I think that one or two of these are a bit too prescriptive for me. I mean, the top one restricts the requests of charity and charities, not-for-profit organisations, but I think we did once have a meeting of local businesses, and I do think that there could be occasions when we might want to do that again. I mean, admittedly, we wouldn't want to have a deep recession or something, but I think there could be occasions when we might want to.
So this committee threw them out.
There's a committee threw it out?
Yes, that was Woodley Business.
Oh, right.
And they
Oh, well.
appear on a regular basis. This committee made the decision to basically cancel that. And remember, no, this is a filtering, but there is always the opportunity for this committee to override that.
I haven't quite finished, actually. Yeah, but I was just going to say it was approved. Oh, well, I've missed that. That last one, I think there's something to be said for that. That you should require the organisations not to use it as a big money raising exercise, because that would be against the spirit, I think.
That's what we want. Well, that's what charities want to do.
Oh, that's true.
So I was just pointing out
there's always a
that
flaw in it.
the annual festival of business was approved by this committee and was held here.
Yes, but then a subsequent committee.
Yeah, but then
So
the organisation of bringing in the Woodley business is a not-for-profit organisation. It's just promoting them all, and but like I said, it's an individual thing. So personally, I would, think very much want to support Woodley business, particularly at the moment.
right, so in terms of criteria, I've got number 4 out, maximum hire time, number 5 out, limit to the number, number 6, removal of chair covers and tablecloths. Okay, so can we vote on that proposal? Or I need a seconder, I guess.
I'll have to second.
Okay, well, let's vote for that. That was a proposal. Anne, are you going to vote or not? Sorry.
I'll abstain.
Okay, so 1 abstention. Right. Youth support service grant guidelines. Which one?
I can do that. Members will recall from the last meeting, and there was a reassessment of the situation in respect of the council support to young people, and it was essentially bounced back to leisure services to consider what a grant application process might look like, and bring that back to this committee for decision. What you can see on page 59 And 60 is the draft criteria for applications for grants for organisations supporting young people. And that was discussed by the committee. It's based largely on the existing criteria we have for other grants. So the format is similar. One of the items that was considered specifically was about where you can see the yellow highlighted amount and the red wording underneath that. It would ordinarily be capped at £3,000 and see how that goes, but with the flexibility that applications, including amounts in excess of that, can be considered on their own merits, because there may well be something more significant that comes along, and we wouldn't want to rule that out. Yeah, members are asked to consider that recommendation.
Just for clarity, Leisure Services Committee will use these criteria whether to make a decision. And can you remind me, that decision then, is it then done, or is it coming?
It would come to strategy and resources, and because of the timescales, and this committee immediately following Leisure Services, we can accept grant applications at any time in the year, essentially, that next Leisure Services.
Alison?
I'd just like to understand, young people, are we talking about 0 to 18, or are we talking about young people as being up to 25?
That's not specified in here. One of the things that Leisure Services is also tasked with doing, and has set up a working party to do, is to consider the council's youth support provision anyway, identifying exactly what you said there, what that target group is for supporting young people going forwards. I think in the context of this, it's left open for the committee to consider on its own merits.
I think that could be a question that a group and organisation will ask you.
I think it is.
Are we eligible to apply? So I think it would be good to clarify this in our guidance.
Yeah, that would then cover the employment.
Okay.
The third bullet of the prioritisation is gaining employment. And if you make it too low, they won't be going out for employment. So 20 would be fine.
18 is fine, so we're doing friendships.
I think, Chairman, that I may be wrong, but the British Youth Council defines young people as being up to the age of 25.
Could we?
That's absolutely right.
I may be.
But the purposes of this is money that we had left over because we didn't pay somebody to give our youth provision, and the provision that those people were providing was definitely for children. It was for 0 to 18. So if we want to change that, then we need a conversation about that, because, you know, from 18 to 25, that is a whole different set of population, that is a whole different set of needs, and we've only got about, how much money was it? It wasn't a huge amount.
Just 30,000.
30k.
Or is it to 21?
I would say.
I just think I'd like to see it stated in the guidance.
I'm not precious what, but let's say what.
I mean, the money.
What's the consensus for the?
In times gone by, some of those 17-year-olds are now 21.
Learning disabilities and neurodiverse individuals in the transition from child to adult. So I'm really happy with 21. I'm not happy with 25 because that is a whole different set of problems.
21 and under. Is that a consensus?
Yeah.
But not for 21st birthday party.
And the other thing I was going to say is I presume the 30k that we've got needs to be spent in year.
Yeah, that's for this financial year.
So it's September. How have we publicised this thus far?
We haven't yet, because until this was formalised, we were ready to go. But once this is agreed, we're ready to do that. We have a community youth partnership meeting in the diary for next week.
The community youth partnership meeting on Tuesday, and the new youth services support meeting due to be on the 27th.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would say is, whilst this is a really, really good start, if you were turning somebody down for money, I'd want a scoring system so that I can say the threshold was 30, you scored 27. Look, because otherwise this is really subjective.
it's not, you know, it's a good start. I'm not saying it's not a good start, but it would be very simple to put this into a group with a bit of scoring system next to it. And then at least you've got some audit trail as to why them, why not them? Because potentially this could, you know, that's 10, if they all want £3,000, that's 10 applicants and you're done.
Especially if you've got a lot of that.
We could try and tie that scoring system in to the application.
Yeah,
So if there's, you know, if you've got 5 categories for scoring, make sure that there are 5 boxes,
indeed. Indeed.
and then it can be marked
Very, very
accordingly. And we can, once we approve it, you know, we can get our PR lady, Anushka, to actually start publicising it tomorrow. And the rest just comes behind.
I just think we need a robust scoring system to, you know, I've just done it for writing, treatment writing. We've disappointed 6 people and the grief. Why? Tell me why. You know, it really doesn't matter, but for £3,000, they'll want to know.
I mean, would we be saying, how many young people did you help last year? And what percentage of them live in Woodley?
I think the Woodley bit has to be in there. Has to be an answer,
I
yes.
mean, when
It could be a new one.
I've been on an early town council in the past, and our grant application form, that was one of the questions, and some of them didn't fill it in. They just got, we couldn't progress it. They have to demonstrate with numbers.
But what if it's a new one that's starting up that has a really good idea?
Well, it's the ambition then, isn't it? You know, most of our people that we're going to help are going to be within the walls of.
If on the other hand, we don't want something new starting up that is actually turns into be full of children from early in Sheffield.
No, it's got to be Woodley.
Or duplicating, you know, something that's all provision.
So can I just pick up a thread there? Talking about organisations, does that mean you're going to preclude individual families?
It says grants to groups and organisations on the top line.
Right, so that answers that question.
Because I think, you know, that was for the whole youth of Woodley. I think we need to try and spread that net as far as we can. And, you know, I would suggest that something like Me Too helps lots of families, whereas £3,000 for one family will help 40.
So in essence, what we're talking about here is duplication of the current grant process, but the word youth is going to be on every paragraph, every sentence, etc. So it's a focused.
Would you start helping individual families with that sort of money in return with this program?
I wasn't thinking about 3,000, but little Johnny
Yeah.
is, you know,
There
needs
are-
to go to a
Look,
weekend.
we have a grant process that people like that can apply to, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
But this is a good step.
Yeah.
To me, this is a major good step.
Yeah, yes.
forward.
Yeah.
So-
Can a body like Sure Start, if they're, which helps, you know, young families, apply for this grant and apply for our other annual grants?
I think that is a question for another meeting.
But
I think one
can
of
they
the
apply for both of these grants? Yeah.
I think one of the questions on your questionnaire is, have you applied for any other town, Woodley Town Centre grants? If so, town grants, if so, which ones? And then at least when it comes to whichever one comes first, when the second one comes, we've got a trail saying, well, they've already had some, so then we make a decision, don't we?
Historically, we've always advised if you've applied and gained an annual grant in a financial year, you wouldn't be eligible to get a community grant for the same year.
But it's something that needs to be
Then
done.
to be considering which one would I get the most
And
from?
we do have youth organisations that get an annual grant, get an annual grant, so. it's-
But they apply every year,
Yeah,
so
and it's,
they could not apply.
Okay. So you've got your homework. So what we need is a fast, small, brief report about scoring.
Yeah.
Which I would suggest we circulate to the councillors here, rather than wait till the next. And let's kick this off. I personally would like to see, the Hub Committee would agree, a project plan for communication. Of what the plan is, what social media what press is going to be. It's something we don't do, but we need to do.
There's
Going
full
forward.
of news stories, so, you know.
I think it's great. I really think it's good.
But Keith, we were asked to consider this recommendation from the other committee. So are we sending it back to them? And then-
No, we're the final arbiter.
So we're asking, good question, so we're asking the officers to tweak it and make it into improvements for it, rather than going back to
Yes, it's not going to go back, well, unless this committee wants to send it back,
we need to get on with it.
that's exactly what we want.
And it's all in here, it's just back to the table.
That's okay?
Yeah, just to clarify, you're happy for that to just be circulated, circulate to all members, obviously leisure members are going to want to see that as well.
Right, so then I've got to just consider, I guess we need to vote for it. All those in favour of what we've just been talking about? No, thank you very much. 3G pitch noise impact assessment, item 12.
Yeah, thank you. This follows on from a recommendation that went to Leisure Services from the 3G pitch steering group. Was to consider an extension to the operating hours of the 3G pitch by 30 minutes to 9:30 on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. What that would require is an amendment to the planning consent that was originally obtained for the 3G pitch. And we know from having looked at this a few years ago, but it wasn't progressed for a number of reasons. What planning required was an up-to-date noise assessment survey in order to consider that. So the proposal here is that survey, that money be allocated to carry out that survey, and that information then used to inform a decision on whether to progress it and also for use in any consultation with residents about that thing.
Since we spoke to them about it before, have the regulations changed? The 3G pitches?
In terms of noise
Yeah.
assessment.
Is it worth speaking to planning before we do that?
Yeah,
See if there's anything else.
I will do, because it's been a couple of years since we had that conversation.
Yeah. Only a couple.
Can I just ask a quick money about cost benefit? How much money will we make by opening it up 3 more half hours?
Yeah, that was a question at leisure. I think the answer.
It said he reckoned, depending on take up, it would be £2,000 to £3,000 per year.
Okay, so after the first year, we break even on that, so it's worth doing, isn't it?
And it's also competitive. We are the only 3G pitch in the whole of Woodley, in the whole of area, that shuts at 9. Everyone else shuts at 10.
So why aren't we going to 10 then?
That's not what the teams were looking at. It was 9:30 that they wanted. Interestingly, originally when it was discussed, they were looking at potential for 10 o'clock. But that conversation was very much about 9:30 and on those days, because that's what they feel.
Should know the answer to this, especially I was on leisure committee last week. But how is a noise impact assessment going to evaluate the noise for half an hour when the pitch isn't being used at the moment?
It would need to be carried out at a time when the pitch is in use, and take measurements of that sound, and then presumably you have to make an assumption about what that level would be at a certain time.
But we've already got permission to use the pitch to 9 o'clock. So I don't understand the purpose of a noise impact assessment for an extra half hour of noise.
So the planning process, right, is the way it works, is we are basically asking for a change in what has been approved.
Right.
Okay, and one of the key tick boxes that the planning department will be wanting to know for something like this is, have you done a noise assessment? If you don't do a noise assessment, they won't even consider a planning application. So it's one of those tick boxes. From my perspective, this has been there for some time. We've never done a noise impact assessment, and I actually think it would be valuable to just do it. It's only £2,000. We've got 800,000. It would be useful to have, because when you're talking to residents, the first people say, "Oh, it's going to be very noisy," which is what they said at the beginning. You say, "Hang on a minute. Here's the impact assessment. Our professionals, it isn't going to be."
it's just like this feeling.
Yeah.
I would just urge whoever's going to do this to think about future proofing it by doing it to 10. Because at some point they're going to get booked up till 9:30 and then they're going to go on and really give it till 10, won't they?
Yeah, I think that's sensible. And of course, going forward, when subject to whatever the decision is on actually doing it, obviously we don't have to use it. We can
Absolutely, you
decide.
don't have to use it at all, but at least you don't have to go under impact.
Well, this committee could actually, when the Leisure Services Committee reviews it, ask them to review the 9:30 and make it 10 o'clock.
I mean, there are implications, aren't there? There are staffing implications and all the rest of it. But, you know, I just think it's worth future proofing ourselves. Don't have to use it.
Yes, they're all the same board. That's it, it won't cost anything else.
The only other full-size 3D pictures at Wendell School. And they're open till 10, aren't they?
Goals,
No, they're not full-size pictures, they're small, life-size pictures.
because Rangers.
Wendy's got no housing around it.
And yes, it's a very.
Cops me back onto it.
Yes, a few, yeah.
If you remember planning, I spoke up for the bats and the birds and the nature reserve.
Yes, but surely the playing fields are to the east of the site, aren't they? The housing is top left of
Stone
Wayne.
cousins and light drugs. Talk to the residents down there.
What's gold? Almost, is that not there anymore?
Yes, it's still there.
It's five-a-side pictures.
Yeah.
They're not in competitive, but you know, if you want to hire a full-size pitch, you know, in the evening after work, then it's Waynevilles or Wood.
Well, they all seem to be used whenever I walk the dog past, so they're clearly in use, which is good, yeah.
So can I bring for all this discussion? Oh, sorry.
Will recommendations of that noise assessment be implemented, whatever, like?
Well, there won't be any recommendations. All they'll say, these are the noise levels at certain times. They won't make any recommendations at all.
Okay, suppose they say, for example, they say noise is like alarming high, for example. Then will we stick to existing time or still we will extend it?
If the people doing the noise impact assessment come up and say you are breaking the rules effectively from a noise perspective, there is absolutely no point in applying for planning permission to change something that you know is going to fail because of the noise.
We employ an independent assessor to do this.
Yes, yeah, it's a
Yeah, I would
professional,
say-
yeah.
Barry won't know.
All right.
So can I go straight to the vote then to approve this 2000? All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we're on to item 13. I'll call you in a minute, Beth. I'll get Kevin to talk about it. So would you like to introduce this one, please?
Thank you. So the Climate Emergency Action Plan, which is attached at Appendix 11 on page 61. On page 3 of the agenda, there's a table under item 13, which just shows some of the changes in progress against the targets that have been made since last time. Just very quickly, target 3 there, rainwater harvesting at the Bowls Close installed as part of the installation of the new irrigation system. So that system uses and reuses that water on the green, which is beneficial for the green, and also saves quite a bit of water there through the summer. We're increasing the recycling of office waste at Woodford Park Leisure Centre and trying some different internal segregated bins in order to do that. We will be installing some segregated recycling bins in Woodford Park, which was reported to Leisure Services last week. A couple initially on a trial, and we're going to see how that goes, but we think that's going to work quite well, having spoken with our new waste carrier about that. And target number 8 there, which was a proposal in the capital programme for the installation of a public water bottle filling station, which you have just approved. So that was one that was suggested a while back and went into the plan. And that'll be up on the exterior of Woodford Park Leisure Centre with public access mains-fed bottle station.
Right, questions? Oh, hang on, just before questions. Beth, do you want to do the carol
Yes, Carol unfortunately couldn't come to the meeting tonight, and she's asked me to read out a statement on her behalf. And so with your permission, Chairman, I'll read it now. The progress of several items on the action plan is very disappointing and reflects the lack of motivation and action by the majority party on the Town Council. I recognise the significant actions of the officers to meet many of the action plan aims and the impact the Town Council has made, but stress that our remit must be wider, looking at ways of involving the whole community in the face of climate emergency. For example, we are all aware of the fires and floods that have taken place over Europe over the last few months. Section 10, and that's on this list on page 61, no, it says 19, but they're upside down, and I've lost my glasses.
Social behaviour change.
Yeah. And section 10 is about encouraging behaviour change. This is a crucial part of any climate change emergency action plan. Yet, two items, work with Wokingham Borough Council and work with the Town Centre Management Initiative, have both got low priorities, with no action on these for some considerable time. The actions on the plan: set up a wood recycling party, section 12, and set up a climate change emergency working party, section 14, have become inactions, with both having been disbanded. Discussing strategies and any planned action works much better in a working group environment than in a main committee, where agendas are already fairly full.
Thank you, Beth. Right, any questions or comments? It's to note. Anne?
It's page 63, energy accounts. It's just investigate potential for installation of solar panels at Coronation Hall. Was this investigation done and it was decided it wasn't feasible?
At that time, with the supplier or the provider that we use for these buildings, they've got a formula ratio as to whether it's worth doing in terms of size and number of panels they can get off. And but that can change depending on the model that they're using at the time to run the scheme. At that time, it wasn't possible, which was otherwise we would have done it then. But it's still on there so that we could keep it under review, because there's no reason why you couldn't do it. It's just whether you can get a way of doing it.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then my other question is on page 65. So install modular units for the allotment site. What would they be for?
Harvesting rainwater. Sorry, that's reworded probably in there.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise,
Just a quick question on page 65, just for my own curiosity. On the move to using grey water for flushing toilets, could you clarify what grey water is?
Harvested water.
It's harvested water.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
okay, otherwise, we'll move on. That's to note. Thank you for that. Any future agenda items? Do we have? I can't see any. No. Publicity and website. All can see publicity of the youth grants. We move into exclusion of public and press. So to resolve that in line with Standing Order 12.2, in view of the confidential nature of the business about to be transacted in relation to contractual and legal matters, it is advisable in the public interest that the public and press are temporarily excluded, and they are asked to withdraw for items 17 and 18 on the agenda. And of course, we will choose to be live.
Once you've voted, yeah.
All those in favour? Okay, 8 for, any abstentions?